Hiroshima, Japan is best known to the world as one of the cities that was hit with an atomic bomb during World War II. However, most people are unaware that Hiroshima once had a heavy presence of gangsters, known globally as Yakuza. One of these street figures from Hiroshima was a legendary Yakuza named Masahiro Onishi. Masahiro Onishi, aka the Devil's Kewpie, was one of the toughest gangsters on the streets in the 1940s, and his name alone struck fear into many. He was best known for his willingness to commit acts of violence despite his harmless-looking appearance. He was also known for being one of the central figures in the city's long-lasting Yakuza wars, known as the Hiroshima conflict. Although Masahiro lived a short life, his reputation in the underworld has become folklore in Japan, and his name is still praised by the Yakuza today. He's even the inspiration for several characters in novels and movies such as the film series Battles Without Honor and Humanity. In this video, we will tell the full life story of Masahiro Onishi and show how he came to be known as one of the most feared Yakuza of all time. Masahiro Onishi was born in 1923 to wealthy parents in Kure City, Hiroshima Prefecture, Japan. Although he should have lived a privileged life, his father died from drug addiction and his mother ran away when Masahiro was just a young boy. He was then raised by his grandmother, who rarely disciplined him. During elementary school, Masahiro was a well-behaved student. While he received poor marks for reading and writing, he excelled at painting. He won painting contests every year, and everyone thought he would have a bright future as an artist. However, at the age of 13, Masahiro's temperament changed. After being bullied by one of his teachers for his poor reading and writing skills, Masahiro snapped and threw a paperweight at the teacher's face. He was expelled from the school, which changed the direction of his entire life. He began to encounter other troubled youths in juvenile detention centers and on the streets. By the late 1930s, Masahiro was hanging out with kids who were members of Yakuza groups around the city. Masahiro eventually met a high-ranking member of the Mukai-gumi in Kure named Moroyuki Hatani. The Mukai-gumi was headed by a man named Shinichi Mukai. Although an organized crime group, their main business was being involved in legitimate riveting work, and they would strive to gain as much turf for their business as possible. Onishi became a member and took a job as a riveter. At the time, the Mukai crew was playing host to some young riveters from Kobe. These Kobe riveters got into a fight with another Kure-based riveter group, the Hadani crew. The following day, Shinichi Mukai held a meeting at a restaurant with the boss of the Hadani crew, Otsuichi Hadani. Onishi took it upon himself to show up to this meeting bearing a pistol in defense of his boss. Mukai explained to Onishi that this was merely an attempt to broker peace with the Hadani crew and convinced Onishi to put away the gun. Hadani, on the other hand, was impressed by the ferocity of this young man. This meeting proved an important turning point for Onishi since it gained him a reputation and allowed him to meet Otsuichi Hadani. This connection led Onishi to meeting three men with whom he would eventually form a shate relationship, becoming sworn younger brothers. These were Hiroshi Tsuchioka, the eventual head of the Tsuchioka Gumi, Shozo Tsuchioka, and Seizo Orimi. Not long after, Masahiro was involved in another incident which made his name spread around town. It was at the young age of 16 when Masahiro and his friends were having a night out in Kure at a local restaurant. The group was drinking alcohol and being a little too loud around other customers. Eventually, they were confronted and told off by a naval officer who was sitting nearby. Masahiro felt he had been disrespected, so without hesitation, he grabbed a sashimi knife from the kitchen to stab the officer in the stomach, and then he cut off one of the officer's ears. News about this incident spread amongst Yakuza, and Masahiro gained the reputation for being impulsive, violent, and fearless. In 1943, Masahiro was drafted to the front lines in China during World War II. It was said that Masahiro was a skilled soldier, but never moved up in rank due to him not taking orders well. However, he killed many enemy troops in battle, and he even later stated himself that he beheaded many Chinese prisoners. A fellow gangster said that Masahiro told him with a grin that it was much easier to behead someone than to be beheaded. The horrors of the war made Masahiro even more violent and cruel than he already was, and this would shape his future career as a gangster. When the war ended, Masahiro Onishi returned to Hiroshima in 1946, which was 1 year after the infamous atomic bombings of that city by the United States military. After the war, the city was in the process of rebuilding, which left perfect conditions for the rise of organized crime. Yakuza groups became involved with the operation of black markets, which sold home items, merchandise, and old military equipment and weapons left over from the war. They also made money from gambling, extortion, narcotics, and robberies. In Hiroshima, the main gangs were known for operating gambling games. One of the main Yakuza groups in Kewpie City in Hiroshima Prefecture was the Tsuchioka Gumi, headed by Hiroshi Tsuchioka. Their rivals were a three-way underworld alliance between the Kohara Gumi, Yamamura Gumi, and Kaio Gumi. Onishi's old friend Hiroshi Tsuchioka inducted Onishi into his gang in a sake cup sharing ceremony and entrusted him with the revenue streams from their gambling dens. Onishi quickly rose through the ranks and became one of the most notorious names in the underworld of Hiroshima. Onishi became known for his bravery and willingness to get violent for his boss. He was quoted as saying that he preferred to do violent crimes himself so that his Yakuza brothers didn't have to, in order to prevent them from getting hurt or arrested. Soon after Onishi's return to Japan, a major gang turf war broke out in the city on August 14, 1946. This was the first of many wars known as the Hiroshima conflict. This series of wars lasted until the 1970s and was the basis for the popular Yakuza film series Battles Without Honor or Humanity, starting with the first film in 1973. Onishi played a major role in the first Hiroshima conflict. The trouble escalated on the night of Obon, which is the Japanese festival of the dead. Seeking to get the upper hand on their rivals from the Yamamura Gumi, Onishi and Shozo Tsuchioka went into the festival looking for the opposition. However, instead they ran into the leader of the Kohara Gumi, Kaoru Kohara, who was part of the rival Triple Alliance. The two gangsters dragged him into a field and threatened him, trying to get him to give up his gambling operations. When Kohara resisted, Onishi drew his Japanese sword and cut off Kohara's left arm. One of Kohara's underlings, Takayuki Samoto, discovered the scene and ran to his boss's aid. Onishi then proceeded to slice off Takayuki's right arm. The story of Onishi cutting off two arms in a single fight spread quickly throughout Kewpie and led to retaliatory killings. Onishi immediately became a feared figure and gained the nickname Akuma no Kewpie, which translates to the Devil's Kewpie, due to his ability to commit violence despite having a baby face like that of a Kewpie doll. Onishi earned a reputation similar to a rabid dog who was ready to attack anyone at the slightest provocation. While his willingness to get his hands dirty was considered admirable for a Yakuza, his lack of calculation and hot-headedness also marked him as a possible detriment for his crew. Onishi was arrested for this incident shortly after, but as a first-time offender, he was released quickly. The three-way alliance knew they had a dangerous enemy in Onishi, but decided it would be better to convince him to join their side. Tatsuo Yamamura, head of the Yamamura Gumi, was chosen to lead the attempt at winning over Onishi. Yamamura was informed that Onishi had a rocky relationship with his crime family. Yamamura used this to his advantage by contacting Onishi and trying to get him to join his side. Yamamura even took a step further by making his own wife become close to Onishi's wife to deepen their bond. Masahiro Onishi was eventually persuaded successfully, and he betrayed his gang by switching sides to the Yamamura Gumi. Shortly after, Onishi was sent back to prison for his involvement in the death of a Kewpie city councilman. He was sent to the Yoshira detention center, and it was here that he met Kozo Mino. Kozo was a tough 21-year-old who was previously in the Japanese Navy. He wasn't yet a Yakuza, but was in prison for killing a Yakuza in self-defense. Onishi and Kozo became very close while locked up and became sworn brothers. The two drew each other's blood and drank it to symbolize an eternal bond. Kozo then joined Masahiro's crew in the Yamamura Gumi. Once Yamamura felt Onishi was properly under his influence, he brought up the idea of assassinating Onishi's former oyabun, Hiroshi Tsuchioka. Onishi accepted the contract and chose his trusted brother from prison, Kozo Mino, as the gunman. Onishi gave Kozo a Mauser HSC pistol for the hit. Then, on September 27, 1949, Kozo found Hiroshi Tsuchioka on the streets of Hiroshima and fired several shots into his body. Tsuchioka was near death and unconscious when he arrived at the hospital, but miraculously managed to survive. That very same year, Onishi assaulted a jockey over a case of horse race fixing at the Fukuyama racetrack. The attack left the jockey severely injured and near death. This assault resulted in a manhunt for Onishi by the police, with searches and wanted posters all over the city. On January 4th, 1950, Masahiro Onishi went out on a walk with his wife when he encountered a drunk laborer angry at Onishi over a, as of yet, unknown cause. During the argument, the man called Onishi's wife a whore and downplayed Onishi's Yakuza status. Onishi later tracked the man down and shot him in the head. A police search was soon in effect. Afterwards, an anonymous tip revealed Onishi was hiding out at the home of Yoshikazu Iwaki, a Yamamura Gumi consultant. At 1:30 a.m., 40 police surrounded Iwaki's home. They discovered Onishi hiding under a futon. Onishi drew his gun and began firing, wounding 2 officers. He ran for a window but was shot down as he attempted to flee through it. Masahiro Onishi died at the scene. Many gangsters in the city were relieved to hear that their most feared enemy had been killed. The Hiroshima conflict between the Tsuchioka Gumi and the three-way alliance continued after Onishi's death. Kozo Mino was eventually caught by the police for his assassination attempt and sentenced to 8 years in prison in 1951. Kozo stayed a Yakuza member for decades to come and remained a key figure in the Hiroshima Yakuza War. He eventually became a well-known businessman in Japan, and his journal writings were the basis for the Battles Without Honor and Humanity novel and film series that followed. Onishi's former boss, Hiroshi Tsuchioka, was eventually shot and killed in 1952 by a Yamamura Gumi hitman. The battles eventually culminated with several more casualties and the three-way alliance turning on itself. The larger Hiroshima conflict lasted all the way up until the 1970s. Since Onishi's death, many in the Yakuza have followed in Masahiro Onishi's footsteps and used his life as a basis for their criminal careers. However, very few have gained the level of notoriety and earned the respect in the underworld that Onishi once had. Onishi will not only be remembered in that life for being a feared and ruthless Yakuza, but also for remaining a true gangster to the end. Onishi's story is a true tale of live by the sword, die by the sword. Even though it's been over half a century since his passing, Masahiro Onishi is still talked about and his legacy will continue for many years to come. Thank you for watching this video, hit the like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for who we cover next.